All right, welcome to the 2023 Alchemer Training. We want to welcome and first off, thank everybody for housekeeping. If you could please mute your phone, that would be wonderful. There's quite a few people that are unmuted. Maybe Elizabeth and Mike can keep the ones. This is our second annual. To start off with, we want to first thank the State of Kentucky Health Department and also the Kentucky State Association, Dana, and also Carrie Pointer, the AOS board member, for leading the effort in responding to the NACHO grant and getting the funds to put this together. To be honest with you, this is a work of love. We are financially strapped at local health departments. Our resources are very slim. And for our ability to go through and respond to that grant, we just want to appreciate their ability to respond on behalf of all of us and make us all aware of it and include all of us in this. So Elizabeth, thank you. Do you have anything else to add before we go ahead and get started?
No, I think everybody's waited long enough. Let's go.
Okay. Mike has been our trainer 2 years in a row. We love that he is. One of the things with Alchemer is that we have a dedicated trainer in Mike and also in Gordon, who supports our any issues with that. So Mike, turn it over to you for the training today. Now we do have 3 trainings. This is one of 3. And if you don't have those on your calendar, please message me in the chat and I can go through and fix that. So Mike, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Good to see everyone again. Just as an introduction, my name is Mike Cronley, and I'm the training specialist here at Alchemer. My background is in customer support, where I worked for 2 years. So looking forward to helping you learn the application. Jacob, just to confirm the training goal for this session's introduction, high-level overview of the product type of training.
Yeah. We want to, this first training is going to be very basic for all the new users. Going through basic survey design tools and then distribution. I don't know how far along you can go through and get into that.
Okay.
Trainings 2, 3, I think we're going to be getting into the new tools of the past year. I know you guys have added quite a few and we can sync on those various tools for those trainings, but yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd be happy to cover the application just from the lens of someone who's new and getting up to speed and building a survey and getting it out and maybe looking at some basic results as the responses come in. So let me share my screen. And Jake, I wasn't sure, I might have missed it. Are you recording the session just as an asset?
Yes, we got it.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me share my screen and I'll try. I know we have a good number of people here.
Go ahead whenever you're ready. Hi, can I have number 4?
Sorry about that. I'm going to force Mike and then I'm going to unmute you. There we go. All right, Mike, if you could unmute yourself now. I just asked you to do it.
Okay.
There we go. We muted you.
Yeah, and I know there's a bigger number today, so I will try to do a better job looking at the chat. If there's any questions that come up in real time, feel free to.
I'll handle all the chat for you and ask them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it. Sometimes that multitasking part, I start to focus on one thing, and so that's helpful. But let me share my screen and we'll just get started. Okay. Here we go. Okay, great. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. So this is the dashboard for the application when you log in for the first time. And before I jump in and show you how to build a survey and how to get it out in the world to get responses, I wanted to highlight some of our self-serve learning options, which I think is really good. So how do you access them? So from the top right, where it says help, and this is the path also to get customer support. If you do have an issue, we have a really good customer support team, and where I came from. If you have a question or problem, please, I'll just go down that path just to show you. Here's the phone number. Here's where you can submit a ticket. If it isn't so urgent and you don't need to reply right away, just fill out the survey. We actually use a survey to run our customer support operation, and you'll get a reply shortly. So that's how you access the support help. But if I'm looking for something and I'm like, gosh, I'm learning about this for the first time, and maybe it is, I'm just going to pick a random topic, style. So I'll type it in and it will present all the documentation articles that have that title. So maybe it's, hey, I just want to learn the basics, which I'm going to cover in today's training, style your survey. So I'll click here, and this is our documentation on that specific topic. So this is one of over 1,000 articles that we have accessible for you. And it's amazing to me that I don't think we have something in our application, and I'll just search and it's like, gosh, we do. There is an article about it. So it's really rich resource. So it is the #1 go-to to answer your questions or to learn the application. And something I wanted to point out, they are kind of lengthy, and everything you'll need is here for the most part. But if you go to the very bottom, you'll see links to related articles. So maybe it wasn't quite the one you're looking for. And it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to learn about how to add a logo into the survey so it's branded the way we'd like. I could click there and kind of go down that path. So just want to point that out. The other one is you don't have to be logged into the application to access these articles. So if I just use, I have Google as my search engine. So same thing, I'll put in the term style, but since I'm not logged in, I'll have to add Alchemer, and then it'll pull up, the documentation. So this is all public facing that you can use. And this is typically how I use it, is I'll just leave the tab open for Alchemer and I'll just search in another tab for the documentation. The other way to learn is through Alchemer University. And the connection I have to it, or the analogy is, you're trying to learn to do something at home, or like you're stuck. Maybe it's like a leaky faucet, or I'm a bicyclist and I had a problem trying to get a tire replaced. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? This shouldn't be that hard. I search up YouTube. There's somebody, friendly plumber, friendly bike shop, short video. And I was like, oh, that's how you do it. So Alchemer University to me is that great resource of recorded videos, are very short and focused on a particular topic. And just like documentation, you can search for style, reporting, distribution. So all those things are available under Alchemer University. It's a good way to learn also. Okay, let's jump in and start learning the application. So when you log in for the first time, this is where you'll land. And I've created folders, and you might see this depending on your license level, but I want to create a new survey. So I'm going to click here, create new. And this is the field where you're going to put in your title. And I'll just put this as temporary. I can always change this. So I'll start building. And then you'll land on the build page. This is where you're going to do the work to build the survey. Okay. First time user, always like, especially for me, when I'm in a new application, it's like, how do I get back to where I started? So this is how you get back. If you click on the Alchemer logo, this will take you back to the dashboard. Typically, if there's no other settings applied, you'll see the survey kind of bubble up, the most recent one that'll appear here. There's a lot of surveys in your account. I wanted to show you this as a kind of a foolproof way to find your survey. So in the URL of the build, you'll see this number attached at the very end. So if I copy this is called the survey ID. And if I go back to the dashboard, and this is, do a better job of this. Here's all my surveys, right? So if I put in the survey ID and press enter, it'll pull up the exact survey. And I think it's beneficial. Sometimes you name surveys, you copied it, the title could stay the same. So survey ID is really a kind of a foolproof way to find a survey. So now I'll go back in. And while I'm here, I want to point this out. These little dots are helpful on the right side. This is where you can copy a survey. You could close it, archive, move to trash. They'll put them in the folders on the bottom left. So just those options are helpful to know about. All right, so I'm going back in and let's start building. So typically on a survey, you might want to put some information for the respondent, some text before you start asking questions. So to do that, you would click on text media and, type in the message. Welcome to the survey. Here's information that's good for you to know. You could put in images or videos also in here, but this is just a basic, hey, we're glad you're here. Here's some information. Now we're going to start building the questions for the survey. So here you'll see add new question. And then when you click it, the window opens from the right, and by default, it will present the radio button question. I'll build this and I'll come back and show you how to add other ones besides the radio button. So maybe it's, hey, can you volunteer? Just a basic question. Check my spelling. And here's the answer options. So clicking in, I can type in the answer option 1, press enter or return to my keyboard. No. And I have a 1-question survey, right? I could share this. This is ready to go. So this is page 1. They would go through here, and then when they click submit, which I'll show you, they'll go to the thank you page, marking the responses complete. And we have this default text media element with that default text, which you can customize, of course. But just to show you what it looks like. So these selectors on the top right here are separate from the first element on the build page. So these are all related to the page. So if I click preview here, I can get a quick glance at how it's going to look. Everything here is just the default setting applied. There's no customization with style. So I can go through and it's like, hey, this looks good. There's my title. Here's, how it's going to look for the respondent. Submit is the button signaling to the respondent that they're going to go to the thank you page, and our system will say it's a complete response. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I could share this right now. So let me go. I'm going to come back, but I just want to show you how easy it is to build and share. So if I go to the share tab, we generate automatically a URL link. So this is our default primary link, a live link, and all you have to do is copy it. If you want to test it, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I always recommend testing from the live link, which is this primary link, and you can do that right away by clicking view. So now this link is not a test link, it's not a preview link, this is the real link, and I could go through and test it for real. And then I could always delete it later, which I'll show you before I send it out into the world to get the real responses. So that's how easy it is to really, build and send out a survey in our system. But let's go back and add more questions. So radio button, super basic. Add a new question. And now I'm going to pick another question. Excuse me. So if you click into this field, then you'll see all the question types that we offer. And we've broken it out into 3 categories. Here's the basic and intermediate, more advanced. And as you learn more about the platform, you will be curious about what does that do? Like what is a conjoint or what is cascading dropdown? And as I'm hovering, it doesn't really show it. And it's like, gosh, what does that do? So we have this really nice feature called a question type cheat sheet, where it's a sandbox. So when I click that, another window opens and I can play with these question types and kind of learn them on the fly. And for here, it's pretty straightforward. I know what a radio button does, but maybe it's, boy, there's some really interesting, maybe ranking questions. And it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. This ability for the respondent kind of drag and drop and rank something in order of preference. So this is something I think it's good from a learning perspective if you're new, what these questions do very quickly, right? The other thing is if you pick, so actually I'm skipping, I don't want to go too far on more of the advanced questions, but So if I pick a drag and drop ranking, which I just showed you, what you can do is go right to the documentation to learn how, for example, how the data will come out in the report by clicking over here, learn more. So if I click there, it should take me to the documentation about that question. And then I could check really quickly in this jump link to that specific section of the article. Ah, there's a distribution. Yes, that will be nice to look at this, how the ranking will come out in that way. So it's just a quick way to kind of validate what question you're using will be appropriate for the data on the back end that is important to you. So let me go back to kind of the basics here of the questions. So I'll do check boxes. And just as a word, that we obviously see a lot of surveys here from customers, but it doesn't really matter if it's a basic survey or really advanced or complex. You still have to have radio button, checkbox, and open text. Like these are the core type of questions that you really need in almost any survey. So I'm going to add a checkbox, and now it's just building off this theme of the survey. It's like, hey, can you volunteer? And then I'll say, well, what days can you come in, right? So I can go through and do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If you have an idea or some other source where you have the survey ID survey built out, what you can do is use our paste in options. So maybe it's in a Word document, and I'm just doing this really quickly. I'm not really pasting it, I'm typing it in, but you get the idea. It's like, hey, I'm just going to paste this in, copy it, and then I can click add options, and I'll fill in the answer options really quickly. So that's a time-saving tip if you have it saved somewhere else, if you typed it up in another format. Another one is if it's a basic question, we have something called Common Answer Library. So this is one, obviously I've staged it to be successful for days. So I'll click days and I'll pop in, but we have the same for like gender or age for radio button. So some of those are time-saving tips. Okay, so now I've got days and I'm building out my survey. And you'll notice when you see the circle, that's a single select option that it's forcing the respondent to pick one. And when you see the little checkbox that is multi-select, so they can pick multiple answers. And the other type of question that I wanted to show kind of as a basic level is open text. So a text box, shorter visual display of the box, good for first name, email, ID number, something short. And an essay is the same thing. It's open text, but it encourages people just visually by the size of the box. What are you going to do when you volunteer, type question. So just the size of it encourages people to type more if you want them to expand on what they're thinking. And it's funny, I see this really frequently. People put a text box and says, hey, tell us more about why you like something. And there's just a little text box. And it's like, well, you're not really encouraging them to type a lot, so that it is kind of an important thing. If you really want them to type, give them the big box, to type it in. All right, so now we built out this survey and super basic, just showing the structure here and things that you can do on this page that are useful from a navigation and building perspective. Let me just show a couple of those things. So let's think about adding more questions. Do I want to put it on more questions on this first page? Maybe I'm ready for a page break for the respondent to give them that sense of movement. They're going through, like they're reading a book, they're turning the page, right? That sense of completion. So let me add a page between the thank you page and page one by clicking here. And now I'm on page 2. And sometimes when I'm testing, or experimenting, I'll just put in a text media element and I will say, hey, this is page 2. And I'll show that just to show that I got that there. And then I'll add a question and I'm building again. And maybe I'm asking for their email address. And an email question is a text box with validation applied for that formatting. It needs to be in that format of an email so you get better data and you actually get the right email, hopefully. And speaking of validation, so at this point, I haven't applied any validation requiring respondents to answer these questions. So they could go through this whole survey and never actually answer any questions. So to do that, when you typically you would do this when you're building, and I kind of skipped over it, but we have this little checkbox, require this question. And when I click it, you'll see this little red asterisk, and that's yes, you need to answer this question. And what happens is if a respondent kind of skips this process, and I think it'll work in the preview. So I'm going to skip this purposefully and like, hey, putting in data, and I click next. It's like, hey, wait a second, this is required. Oh, okay, I forgot that. And then they can move on to the next page throughout the survey. So recommend obviously validation if you want that data. And other times it's like, you know what, sometimes it's additional information. I don't really, want to require them to answer it. So maybe I'll be selective with that. And it's like, hey, maybe, I don't really need to know what you're going to do, but if you would like to give it, then they can skip it if they want. But that's the validation part of requiring. And then just some other navigation tips here. So I can copy a question. Maybe I would like to add another email question further down in the survey. So I'll just copy it. I don't have to rebuild it. And we usually put a copy of whenever you copy something in our system, great. And then, hey, let me move that. So I copied it. Let me move it. So I could drag and drop. If it's on the same page, it's pretty effective. But when you're going up between pages, it gets a little clunky. So we have a second option. If you click it and then directly paste it wherever you'd like to go. So I'm going to say after that last question on page 1, let me place it there so you can do it that way also. Okay. Delete. I don't need that question. Hovering in between the elements. So maybe, this isn't fully built out, big survey, but maybe it's like, gosh, I started adding a lot of questions to this page. Maybe I do need a page break. So if you just hover in between the elements, you'll see this insert bar. So one of the options is a page break. You could also kind of wedge in a question at that location if you'd like, or a text media element. So I'll put a page break here. And then I've got a 3-page survey. And then I changed my mind. I want to merge them back together. So we have this merge option to bring it back together. Okay. So other things that might be good for you to know, the view settings on the top of this build page, if you click it, this shows kind of the story of the build of this survey. So page ID, question IDs, we generate these IDs for each element. And I'll talk about logic in a little bit. So it's nice to have this displayed, I think. So here's the ID number for each element and what type of question it is. So just a little bit of a roadmap. I think it's nice to have that as you're building. And I'll show how that comes out with logic, which I'll explain in a little bit. So this is just the navigation, how to build the survey, kind of the selectors to do the work that you want to do. And then these page elements or selectors, same thing. You can move a page by clicking and dragging and flip-flopping those page location sites. You can copy a page, delete the page. If you want to edit the page, and you could put a page title, optional if you'd like, and apply logic also. So I'll talk about logic in a second as far as hiding an element by default and then having it appear based on the condition. Okay. I'll pause there. Are there any questions kind of in this initial phase of how to build a
we only
survey?
had one. Danielle, did it answer your question? It was, is there a cheat sheet for how the data will look in Excel? And we didn't get them over a cheat sheet, but
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll have to look over it. It was a lot. It's like 40 pages, but I think it's pretty much what I was looking for. Just because you do have a lot of customizing of the questions. So it's sometimes here we like to make a customized question, but we don't always know what that's going to look like on the data end. So when it like, it's great when it looks great in a survey or in a report, but we don't always know like how that's going to look in data.
Yes, and the way you phrase that is perfect. It's like, hey, we like the question and we like how it's looking for the respondent, but is that going to work for us? Like that's the right thinking. It's really good. So let me just show you 2 quick ways. So this is pretty basic, like a checkbox, right? So if I go to edit and the same thing, I'm just going to navigate quickly to the documentation, and then I'm going to go to exporting. And here's how it's going to come out. And this is, pretty solid. So each answer option for a checkbox will have its own column. There is a setting, a little bit more advanced training, which I could cover. You can group all of the answer options for a checkbox into one column separated by a comma, if that meets your needs. So there's an option there. The other one is just do it, right? So I'm going to go through this test and I'll put in, I'm just going to test it really quick. So I'm just gonna go through view and I'll put in yes, no, I'll pick a few days and I'll put in test, go to next, put an email. Actually, shoot, I should have not made that it's gonna stop me if I don't put in the right email. Alchemer.com. So now I'll submit. So I just did a real response to really test this out. And then I'll go to results, individual responses. We'll see how fast it processes. Nice. And then I'm going to go into my exports and I'm just going to run it, right? Just a really quick test. And we'll talk more about this later about how to customize this before you download it. But this shouldn't take too long because it's just one response. And then I'm going to validate in real time right away. Is it meeting my needs just with one response? So I'll open this up and drag it over. And, here's a response ID, excuse me, number 1. And I didn't filter out all this metadata. So I have to kind of scroll over. And then it's like, hey, here's the beginning of the survey. And there's how the checkboxes come out. Sorry, this is a radio button. That's yes, no. Here's the beginning of the checkbox. And then the open text, if there is, test, email. So it's kind of like the proof is in the pudding. Just do it, just like you really would with you're pretending to be a respondent, and then you can validate it really quickly that it's good or not. So
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome.
I have a really good question. I know, Joe, you got the answer to it, but so many people ask this of me. It says, can you add a page title without it showing up on the live survey? Or is there something else to track pages by content or theme?
Great question. So, and I think the use case for this is I want it to be for me as the builder internally to help organize what I'm doing and have a reference point. But
Right. Joe, you can speak if you want. If you're able.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yes.
okay, let's try it. So here's page 1, and I could click the pencil or click here to add this page title. So I'm thinking in the lens of this for me. Page 1 is contact info, whatever, the beginning of the survey, save. So by default, this will show to the respondent. So to hide this, so go to style, and I think it's text options. And then by default, this is selected, show page titles. So now I'll hide it and apply changes. And then as the respondent goes through, they won't see it. And you could do the same thing with the survey title, but that's a nice way to kind of organize. And like the benefit, I think another benefit of doing this is when you're moving things or you start doing more advanced things, you'll see this. So if I decide to kind of move something by clicking, it's doing that. See if I can, sorry, let me refresh this a little bit. So you'll see that the title comes through. So it's kind of helpful to have that as a navigation also, especially for bigger surveys. The other one I want to point out, like when in the sense of like, hey, I'm building this and I want to have the secret code or like my reference data, but not show it to the respondent. Another one is, so this text media element, you can use that as a note catcher or an idea that you're just putting in. So I'm going to add this in, and this is for me or for someone else. Like, this is why I did it in this survey, right? So now I don't want that to be shown to the respondent, but I do want to have it be shown if someone else comes in and looks at the survey I built. So I can go to logic and say, hide this element by default. So I'll just click here and save. So this is hidden, but it's a note. And if I go to preview, the respondent won't see it, but it's just a kind of quick little thing for me as a record. If someone else you're collaborating with on a building survey, this could be there as a reference point. So, okay. Any other questions related to maybe hiding things?
That's all we've got so far.
Okay, great. All right, so let's kind of, I was going to move, I wanted to go to style and test, but I wanted to maybe stay here to show some of a little bit more advanced features and just kind of introduce them that are probably used the most. So one of them is logic. So, and I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. So let's think about this story of this survey. So the first thing you're asking is, hey, can you volunteer? If this person says no, why would we even ask this question to them, right? It doesn't really make sense to them. I can't volunteer, so why are you even showing me that question? So I want to hide this question by default. I don't want it to appear right away. So whenever I hear the term logic in my head, it's like, I want to hide it. So let's hide this question. So I'm editing this question, and then I go to the logic tab, and the first checkbox is only show this question based on answers to previous questions. And what is going to make it appear? So it's a little bit of a waterfall effect. What's up above can be sourced down below. Can you volunteer is yes. This will make it appear when they select yes. So now, since I have the view settings with the logic appear selected, I have this little cheat sheet. Oh yeah, there is logic on this question. This is basic logic. If you use more advanced capabilities with logic, you won't be able to do it in the preview mode. But here I can, because it's basic question logic on the same page. This is what I expect. I applied logic to an element, which translate to please hide it. If they say no, we don't need to ask that follow-up question. But if they say yeah, oh yeah, which days? Great, thank you. So that's the benefit of logic. It's really nice for a respondent. It's cleaner data. You're not getting kind of cloudy data because people might answer it and doesn't apply to them. So very beneficial tool in any survey platform really, but it's good to know about. And that's just kind of the foundational logic, question logic. And we can go into a little bit more of that later. The other one I want to introduce while I was on this page is send email action. So this is one of our most popular actions. And first of all, what is an action? So this text got updated, which I like. It's it lets you do all kinds of things with your survey or data. Send a thank you email, push data to Salesforce, custom code. Like, it just enhances the survey. And you can do so much with it that typically the respondent isn't really aware of. It's kind of operating behind the scenes in a way. So one of the classic ones is, let's send an email to the respondent. So I'm going to add in a question that is an email. Hey, give us your email. And there's other ways to get this data in, but this is, basic one. Just ask for it, right? So the email is going to be in the survey. And then we want to send each person who comes through the survey an email. So we have the buttons here because they're used so much, but to access all of our actions is here. And then you'll see, here's all the options, right? So this one's by far the number one. Send an email. And this is everything you see here is customizable, like the from name, the reply to. If they click reply in the email, you could have it go to you. Subject line, I just put in different, something to identify it as today. And then this is all helper text that you don't really need. It's just helpful in the beginning. So this is the body of the email message, what you're going to say. Hey, hi, whoever you are, thank you for taking the survey. Here's some follow-up information. And then it's, how do we do this dynamically so it's automatically, every person, boom, 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 will get an email. So here's the survey taker merge code selector. So I'll click that and this window opens up and it's, where's the email? We need it. And in the survey, it's located here. That's the question that they're going to put in that data. So I'll save that. And now it's a merge code that appears here, which is a story in itself. We're getting a value, which is the email from question ID 10. That's our number that we assigned to that email question that I put in, right? So that's dynamic. So now I'll save it. And if I run this and I put in my email, I will automatically get an email sent to me. It'll fire right away, right? So other things you can do with this is obviously you could replace this with your own email. And maybe it's not a survey going out to a lot of people. Maybe there's something that you would like it to be notified. Like I want to be notified when someone completes a response. The other thing that you can do is maybe you don't want to email for every time. So right now there's nothing stopping this email from triggered, and we call it the term fire. There's nothing to stop this from firing every time. Logic. This should say only fire. Only do this thing when a condition is met. So maybe it's, you know what, I really want to get notified, excuse me, I'm short on people who are volunteering on the weekend. So I would love to get notified about the people who can volunteer on Saturday or Sunday. So now I will get an email just for the people who said they could come in on Saturday, Sunday. And obviously you can imagine all the possibilities when you're building a survey. Like just make it really focused. And I don't want to get notified for everything, but a certain use case, yes, it's really important. I would like to get notified. So just wanted to make sure I covered or introduce logic and send email actions because they're so useful and helpful. Even at a basic level, they're a great tool. I was going to move on to the style tab, but I wanted to pause here if there are any questions before I move on. Okay, thank you, Jacob. All right, so let's move on to actually moving along this path with our tabs. So the next one is style. So this is where you can customize the look and feel of the survey for a respondent. And, Jacob, maybe you can kind of give me some guidance on this. I'm not sure how much leeway you want them to have as far as this design perspective, but it's there.
I think it's very helpful. In fact, I did not know about the layout option down below.
Oh, yeah, great. So, so I'll just kind of work my way down here and try to pick out some of the highlights. So a consideration is, and I forget about this too. I'm always like, oh, I work on a computer, so I expect people to take the survey on a computer. And it's like, well, people might want to pick it up on their phone. So to preview how your survey will look, there's this device previews. This is the desktop. But
Do
let me.
you guys have numbers internally for Alchemer? What I'm getting, I would say it's around 80–90% of respondents are on cell phone. Do you guys have that number?
That's a great.
I think people understand a little bit more because I think people are more shocked that the walking away from desktop use.
Yes, that's a great question. I would have to check with the product team to see if we have that aggregate data overall for all of our customers. What is the percentage? But that's a great question.
I do know I attended one of the admin meetings that I was invited to, and they were saying that every year it goes up higher, and at that time it was in the high 80s, but I didn't know if you had an updated number.
Wow. Okay, that's good. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
It kind of makes you adjust your, oh, I should be looking at how it applies on a smartphone type thing, you know?
Yes. And yes, this is a great topic. Let me go back. So one of the things is, so I built this question, I chose it, and I was like, hey, you should validate this to see how it's coming out in the data, in the results. But you should also check how it's going to be with survey taking. And this is, desktop, but then this is the mobile experience, right? So this is a quick preview of that to see for that question type. But obviously in style, we do a much better job of showing that overall for the whole survey. And it's like, hey, what's going to happen? So this is called the one at a time interaction. And that's the default setting that's applied for the mobile experience. So we, based on, there's some data behind the scenes that we track, we know if it's a mobile device. As soon as we recognize it, it's like, hey, this is how it's going to look for you. So this is the one at a time interaction. And if it is a single select, as soon as I click this, watch what happens. It just swoops out. If it's a multi-select or open text, we don't know when you're done. So we don't do that swoop automatically. Then you click and boop. So essentially the page structure is broken. It's not really a page structure anymore. It's just each element's being presented one at a time. Some of the more advanced questions, yes, you should definitely check it if you're picking them, what's going to happen on the mobile device, because it might not be a good experience. And then it's, can I simplify? I still want the data, but can I pick a question type that's a little simpler, that's going to render better on a mobile device? So, these are just considerations to think about. The other way to test this mobile interaction is, so under the Share tab, we offer the ability to create a QR code. So I'm not doing this to print out a QR code. I actually want to test this. So this is a live link. So actually you could do this right now on your screen. You just pull out your phone, scan it, boop, it's on your phone, and you can validate really quickly on your device. And this is real, right? It's not our best guess under the Style tab. This is good, right? And you feel confident about the interaction on a mobile device. Okay. And the options here, so this is all things you can manipulate under the Layout tab. So you'll see the desktop is standard. And these little GIFs are actually really good. It's like, hey, all the questions are on one page. They're being shown. And then one at a time is, that swooping in. So the mobile interaction, we define it right away as one at a time. But in certain situations, you might want to go to standard. So they will scroll through and you'll see the survey presented this way. So there's flexibility there. It just depends what questions you pick, etc. if you want to make it standard or not. But that's our default setting there. Okay.
I have a question. Is there pros and cons to this? Because I've had people call in about that. Was there a reason why they were designed 3 different ways? Or is it just semantics, just to look cool?
It's a good question. I don't really know if there's a right answer for that.
I don't know if there was something on the back end. So there's nothing really on the back end that changes anything. It's
No. How the data gets reported out, it has no impact on that. It's really just how it's being presented to the respondent and how they're interacting with it on their device. So the data is still the same. So it's just something when I first started, I especially didn't really understand this that well, or didn't know oh, you could change it to standard if it's beneficial to you, you think it'd be good. So there's those options available. So, and I've seen this on desktop too. So sometimes there's another survey tool called Typeform, which is, I've seen them. I don't know if you've experienced it, but it has that one at a time effect. So you enter in your name, you're going through, it's almost like a data entry form, kind of a contact type survey. And you type in your name, boom, it swoops in. So you can do the same thing on the desktop. So you could have that same effect on a desktop interaction. I don't see it that often, but for certain use cases, if it's kind of a short, fun survey, but it's a little disorienting, I think, on a desktop. It's kind of like, oh, that's unusual. I didn't expect that, but you can do it. Some of the other things that just to highlight here on this page is themes. And Jacob, I'm not sure if you have set up these as an admin, but the theme library is basically a saved, like someone has already done the work to really make it look good. The logo, the header color, font, all this styling work has been done. Save as a new theme. And then as a user, you go in, you go to the theme library, and it's like, okay, this is kind of our standard style. And let's just boop, click, and we'll have it, right?
We saw this new addition on the admin page. We have not yet sent it out to our AOS states to do, but this is a great call that we could ask for themes that people like and add to it. I'll add that down to our library training.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. And then you have the standardization, and it
Right.
saves a lot of time and looks professional across all of the different branches, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's nice. So the other one is, to create that, I'm gonna go back to the desktop, is the logo. It's really a common use case to put in a logo, your brand up at the top. And this is sourced from the design library files. So clicking this, it will navigate me away. That's why I'm not clicking on it. You're basically uploading an image into our system, AWS, our database. Then it becomes accessible when you click, hey, I would like to add a logo. It's really an image, and I've saved it. It's in the file library, and then I insert it. And then from there, I can do some customization. I might even have to adjust the size of this before I upload it. So it takes a little bit of finesse. And then, oh, header color. I don't like the header color. Let me just try to match it, and you can get hex codes and all those things to match it. And then it's like, hey, I don't want the survey title. And then you go to text, and, that survey title isn't applicable. I just want it to look clean like this, right? So this is just kind of going through some of the things you can do. I don't like the buttons that say next. I wanted to say go on or finish. So all these things you're doing here, and just give you a sense of what the bigger picture of, like, all the customers that we see with all different surveys. Typically, there's not a lot being done with the page color, the background color, the font style or size. Like, most of our customers are happy just with this clean, basic look that we present, but all the work is happening up above with the logo and the header and that presentation right at the top. So just to give you a sense, the bigger picture, what we see. So, so that's the style tab. And unfortunately, I do have a hard stop at noon my time on the hour.
We have about 2 minutes. This is a good stop. We've done build and style. Are there anything else you wanted to close up and do a question and answer before we end? I think learning the difference between squares and circles, I had no idea that has something.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, just side story, my support manager, who was incredible when I started, like, he's so smart and so knowledgeable. He told me a story when he started, he didn't know the difference. And like ever since then, I'm like, gosh, if Topper didn't know that, that's something I should probably keep sharing. It's really important, just those foundational things. So I'm glad you thought that was useful.
In further trainings, we will be going through the test and share probably in the second training, most likely. And then
Yeah,
final, we'll be going through results and reporting.
yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we can kind of keep moving along. The results section, that could take, that's good to spend a whole chunk of time on. There's a lot associated there. And the share, how you get it out, there's so many different ways. So that's good to cover too. So these are two big topics. And then some other ones just to be thoughtful about, just planting seeds. I don't know if translating a survey is something that's important,
It's huge, yeah.
and we can cover that. So that's a good one as one of the tools options. We can cover that.
I would also, for those live, please submit questions to me. I can organize them in a way and bring them up in the meeting. As you go through, please study this week what we covered. And we'll start on training number 2 next time. Not seeing any other questions. Okay, I'll stop the recording.